At long last, after 3 months, the Propagandists finally respond to carrying the liar. If you remember previously, Ralph Renee picked up on a book by Michael Collins titled Carrying the Fire. It contained a photograph of Collins practicing aboard the Zero-G simulator and a doctored version of that photograph. This proven fake was displayed alongside official Apollo 11 photographs, and in fact, on the front of the 1975 edition, the same image of Collins was depicted floating against the Earth on his Gemini 10 mission. For years, Jay Windley had repeatedly alleged that Renee was offered an unclaimed $10,000 by Jim Olberg to produce evidence that the photograph was indeed purported to be Collins on his Gemini EVA. When interviewed on 3 separate occasions, Renee assured me that these allegations are false. Finally, on December 17, 2007, this was finally brought up at ApolloHoax.net. Windley, clinging to his false claims that Olberg privately offered Renee the money, stated that Olberg had announced the offer publicly. But where did he make this public statement? A search at Olberg's website only pulls up a single result for Collins' book, in which he simply refers to a passage from it and in no way makes an offer for 10 grand. Around this time, Apollo Hoax member Reynold Bott had been posting on my video. I had to block him after he purposely and frequently ignored evidence and numbers that I gave him at his request, just so he could go back to his own forum and twist the events of our debate. He cracked the ice by endorsing and promoting false charges that I was cherry-picking misrepresented quotes from source material that I supposedly didn't have access to. Reynold Bott directed me to where Olberg made this public announcement. A message he posted at the Bad Astronomy forums on the 30th of January 2003, and another on the 22nd of February the same year. Olberg neglected to show proof that he sent the supposed letter and merely wrote up the text in his message. The propagandists now claim that it is possible that these letters got lost on their way to Renee's mailbox. Remember, Windley makes the bold claim that Olberg sends Renee reminders on a routine basis. I strongly doubt that the post office could be that incompetent to coincidentally lose every single letter Olberg supposedly sent over a 5-year period. I highly doubt this letter to Renee even existed. Looking at this message Jim Olberg posted, several blatant discrepancies show up. Olberg claimed the 1975 edition of Carrying the Fire was a paperback. It was a hardcover. He also claims that the 2 photographs in question appeared 4 pages apart. In actuality, they were over 200 pages apart. God only knows how Olberg could be that way off. But most curiously, in the supposed letter to Renee, Olberg writes,
"How can you allege that they implied it when in fact Collins explicitly states on page 254 of the Ballotine edition that there were no photographs of his EVA. One of the great disappointments of the flight was that there were no photos of my spacewalk. All we had was the film from one movie camera, which recorded an uninterrupted sequence of black sky. I was really feeling sorry for myself, unable to produce graphic documentation for my grandchildren of my brief sally as a human satellite. Therefore, by Collins' own account, can't we conclude that any picture of him in a spacesuit is not that of the Gemini EVA?"
I found the quotation Olberg refers to, but there was some important information left out. The full quote was, One of the great disappointments of the flight was the fact that there were no photos of my spacewalk over to the Agena. The Agena was the unmanned booster that the Gemini docked with. Collins is simply expressing regret of there being no footage of him approaching this booster rocket during his EVA. Ohlberg conveniently left out this context and even added a full stop after the words spacewalk, implying that Collins stated there was no footage of him walking in space in general. Not only did Ohlberg neglect to prove he had offered Renee the money, he also misquoted Michael Collins and then tried to pin his misquote on Renee. Reynold Bott went on to state,
If Renee did not receive the letters, they were there for him to see in public.
And Ohlberg honestly expected Renee to see this so-called public statement? People who know Ralph Renee personally knows that he doesn't use the internet for anything other than hosting his own website. As he told me during our first interview,
I don't go to websites, man. I don't need any of their bullshit.
I call Ohlberg's message a so-called public statement because the correct term for this is selective distribution. You know the man you're addressing doesn't use the internet and is therefore not likely to read your forum. So you write up some dribble, complete with $10,000 offer, and then post it at your forum, claiming you sent it to the recipient in question. Your supposed recipient, of course, has no idea of this message you posted at the forum, all because he doesn't use the internet. Taking full advantage of this, you then claim that he knows of your offer and backed away from it because he supposedly couldn't provide the evidence. It must have taken a pretty sick collection of minds to dream up a scheme like that. On page 184 of his book, Bill Casing had this to say about Jim Ohlberg. A correspondent in New York told me that Ohlberg had called me a nut and poorly informed. The correspondent also said that Ohlberg was a CIA employee.
They put up a website. I'm supposed to find it and go to it and read what they subscribe then.
Right. First, let's check the play weight of your stylus.
Turn it down. Please the shit. Turn it down.
I wasn't getting the best possible results.
Right. First, let's check the play weight of your stylus.